Hey, what's up everybody, how's it going? It's Dan's Great here, back with more of the tower from last mission, and I find myself back on floor 10. Those of you guys that watched the last part will know that I had some trouble and I got myself into a little bit of a corner and I had to restart guide to kind of find my way back here again. And to be honest, it was good for me because it improved my understanding a little bit of how the tower and the combat works in this little style of game. So obviously, roughly every 5 floors or so, you're going to have elevators that are sealed. And I mean, one of the most confusing things that I found was I didn't know what I had to do to unlock the seals, and as far as I'm aware, I could not find any way of actually finding out that information. So I thought perhaps maybe if you stood on top of the elevator and checked it out, then maybe it would tell you, but honestly, I could not find anything in the game that would indicate to you what you needed to do until you actually did it. So it doesn't really apply too much for this one. You see, look, I was trying to do that. Yeah, it doesn't apply so much for this floor, but some of the ones further ahead, there are some really strange things that you have to do in order to unlock the seal. And an example of that would be for one floor, for example, you have to drop 2 items. And honestly, if you have if you don't have a fairly full inventory, and you have all of the items that are quite important, then I don't see why you would ever drop an item. So I mean, some of them they're very, very difficult to figure out by yourself. So I mean, I think I spent a very, very long time on the 15th floor while I was trying to figure out what to do with this whole seal thing.
Pick your poison.
And after a while I just concluded that this was stupid. I wasn't going to waste any more time doing this because I needed to obviously record it and upload it, so I just went online and I found all of the unlock conditions, so that made my life easier. And if you guys want to do this as well, I definitely recommend, instead of trying to figure it out yourself, honestly there's not really much value to it. I would just go online and just have a list of everything that you need. It would probably make your life easier. So yeah, that's the whole elevator seal thing. For this floor, it's pretty easy. I think you just defeat 10 enemies and it unlocks the gate. So you just have to do your thing. Obviously, I got the alchemist equipped because I want to keep a distance from the enemies. But the low HP is killing me. It's very difficult. But at least I'm healing HP over time, which is nice. Yeah, so you guys probably would have noticed it by now, but I'm actually doing post-commentary at the moment, so I realised that this is really going to take long. I thought maybe it would be like a 2, 3, 4 hour type of DLC type mission, but honestly it's almost like it's a mini game within itself. And as of recording this, I'm at level 60, I believe. I just cleared level 60, and it's been like 9 hours or something like that. And obviously, amongst this 9 hours, there's tons of this menu use and fighting enemies over and over again, and it's really not ideal to do commentary on because most of your time is either spent in the menus juggling around with items and dress spheres, or is spent kind of just facing enemies and slugging it out. They hit you, you hit them back. They hit you, you hit them back, etc. So in that sense, it's not ideal to do commentary on, and obviously it takes very long. So what I decided to do was just record all the way through it because when I don't have to worry about commentary, I can record whenever I want. And I've already recorded, like I said, up to floor 61 as of this point. And what I'm doing is cutting things down and just making it easier to follow for you guys, because otherwise it's going to be extremely boring. It's fairly fun to play. I found myself, now that I am quite very deep into the whole mission, I have found it quite fun, just mainly because it's so different from what I was playing in Final Fantasy X-2. But obviously the whole idea of the dress spheres and their unique looks and abilities and everything, and the more kind of strategic aspect to it, the way you can plan out your moves and do different things, kind of reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy X in that way, because it's turn-based, so it's pretty cool. It's definitely been different. And I shared on Twitter that I thought it was a good idea for this to be like a... Shit. Okay, so it turns out I defeated 10 enemies, so that was actually quite helpful. So yeah, I said this would be quite ideal for PS Vita players, so if you have a PS Vita and you haven't tackled Last Mission yet, it's kind of a good one to just do whenever you want to play on your PS Vita, just like whether you're on the go or just sitting in bed or whatever. I think it'd be quite fun to play on the Vita, honestly, because it's quite old school in that sense. Obviously there's no...
I've got all the energy I need!
Like complex animations or anything like that, so it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of old school. I quite like it. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on now. So from now on, it's going to be more kind of extended highlights of me getting through the floors, and some of them are going to be short. You know, some of them, sometimes when you go up an elevator, you end up right next to the next elevator. So sometimes they're very, very short, and sometimes levels can take 10 minutes. So it just depends on what comes up, what I want to do, whether I get into trouble, whether I want to mix stuff, and all of this. So yeah. I haven't done any post-commentary for quite some time, actually. I think I did it for 1 or 2 parts of Final Fantasy X for the side quest, but it's different. But every 10 floors we get some cutscene action, so it should be time for that, and then we can discuss it, because this is mainly what I wanted to play Last Mission for, just to see what was going on with the story after the events of 10-2.
Out of shape?
A little. I haven't gotten much exercise lately. What about you, Riku?
Piece of cake! You know why? Because I don't sit around all day doing nothing like you do.
You've got me there.
So, what have you been looking for, Riku? Some machine sunk in the sea or something?
That's right!
Oh yeah, you've been helping Shinra, haven't you?
Well, you know how Shinra left the ship and is off researching something or other with Rin? Every now and then he asks me to check out this or that. He says he can't do it himself because he's just a kid. So I'm always looking for ruins on the bottom of the sea or off running all over on some mission or another. Oh yeah, and I did some work for Pops too, because he had another one of his crazy business ideas. Something about striking it rich at the Gagazet hot springs and using the money to rebuild home. Brother wasn't too hot on the idea, so I stayed out of it, but I introduced Pops to a business partner. If I had to guess, I'd say Pops is probably working on his Welcome to Oaxaca's right about now. That's Pops for ya. And it looks like the LeBlanc Syndicate has got some ideas of their own, too. But those are Ronso lands, right? They weren't even going to consult with Kimari. Can you believe it? So I helped set up a meeting between them, you know? He said,
Kimari worry hunters defile sacred ground.
But LeBlanc just told him the Syndicate does whatever it wants. I mean, show some gratitude, will ya? And then there's Clasco. You know how kids are. He still bugs me to help him out all the time. It never ends. I end up babysitting the kindergartens on whatever silly mission they're on. And the more I help, the more he ends up depending on me. Yeesh! Oh yeah, I heard from Tobli a while ago too. And check this out. He wants to hire me to get up on stage and sing. He said I've got to sound as good as you, Uni. So I've been taking voice lessons from Barkeep. My darling, I love you.
Wow, you certainly have been busy.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Wanna help? Rejected again. No matter how many times I ask, she always says no.
But if I were as busy as you, I'd go out of my mind.
You never want to see me anymore, Uni.
You know that's not true. Did she really think I didn't want to see her?
Okay, so there we go. That was the little bit of cutscene action from the tower. And my first thoughts were the fact that Yuna's not getting any exercise. Tidus is back, right? They should be getting plenty of exercise, if you know what I mean. So, I'm not sure why she's not getting any exercise. But then again, I mean, so far we've had no mention of Tidus at all, so we don't know what's going on with him yet. Maybe we'll get more information as we go on, because I'm pretty sure, obviously, whatever the perfect ending is, that has to be whatever's canon in the story. So, surely last mission should be following on from the perfect ending of Final Fantasy X, right? I don't know. Other than that, I mean, we can see that Riku's active lifestyle just continuing, because that's the kind of person that she is. You know, she's very different with Yuna, and I think that's maybe what's starting to become a bit more apparent now, because before, I mean, regardless of how different they were united in the same goal of doing something together. But now that they're kind of allowed to, they don't really have, you know, the burden of sin or, you know, Vegna gun, all of this kind of stuff. Everyone is free to kind of go their own way now. And Yuna's had a taste of the active life, and she's realised that maybe that's not quite for her. So it seems like there's a bit of a parting of ways almost here. So Riku's going to continue her own active lifestyle, but Yuna doesn't really want a part of it anymore. So it's interesting, indeed. I've got to say, Riku, I think, sounds a little bit different than she did before, because I guess now that I think about it, these guys haven't done the voices for Yuna, Riku and Pain for a very long time. So, I mean, I doubt they came back in for the remaster. It's just, it's pretty, I think it's still the same, you know, sound files that they used for the old game, surely, just with maybe better quality. So they have not done the voices for Riku, Yuna and Pain for an extremely long time, so I guess credit to them for still not sounding terrible. I mean, you know, I think Waka sounded worse, but you can kind of sense slightly that it's a little bit different, especially with Riku a little bit. I mean, the general feeling that I get when I see that cutscene and the way it's been written and presented, it's almost as if the developers kind of couldn't let go of the whole Final Fantasy X world, you know, Spira and all that kind of stuff, and they said to themselves, well, come on, can't we just go back one more time? And they kind of tried to come up with something that they think, you know, would be a nice way to check up on everyone to see how they're doing, sort of one last time. The way it's presented, the way Riku kind of explains what everyone's up to and reminiscing and all this kind of stuff, it's very, I feel like it's almost got a fan fiction like tone to it, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's really building up towards any kind of significant story. It just looks like something that was contrived to get, basically just reunite with everyone and just have one more mini adventure together, just because they can, really. So, I don't know, that's the feeling that I get right now, but as we see more cutscenes, hopefully we should have a better idea as we move on. So, as you can see with the shops, I mean, most of the time there's not very good stuff, and a lot of the time it's overpriced, but every now and again you do get some really interesting things, and especially sometimes you visit shops that have dress spheres, so you have kind of pre-prepared level 2 dress spheres that are like 1,000, 1,500 gil, so those kind of shops are the ones that you want to be getting to. To be honest, I quite liked using the psychic dress sphere when I'm kind of traveling around, mainly because of the teleport ability, which you can only have if it's actually equipped as your main kind of dress sphere. So teleport is obviously nice because it can get you from one side of the room to the other, and provided that your path is not blocked, it's a pretty easy way to zip across great distances and to get yourself out of trouble if you're finding that, you know, there's going to be enemies ganging up on you in the near future. So I quite like Psychic, but unfortunately I don't get to pick up very many of them or fuse very many together. So it actually ends up being the Dark Knight that I end up managing to fuse together quite often. And you're going to see, it's obviously they're quite randomly generated, so it's pretty much luck, but in my playthrough that I've had so far, the Dark Knight is very abundant compared to the others. So I think as of level 60, or as of floor 60, I have a level 11 Dark Knight, I think, and I think the next closest is Gunner, I think, at level 5, or Thief or something like that. So just the way it played out, really. So it's just randomized, but I found a lot of good Dark Knight drops, and I just kept fusing them together. And what helps with Dark Knight is that it has the most HP out of all of the dress spheres, so very high HP, good magic stat as well, so you can use, if you have a black mage as well in your kind of list of dress spheres, you can use some Thundaga, that kind of stuff. If you have a psychic in there too, you can use Psychic Bomb to deal magic damage to everyone in the room. So Dark Knight is pretty useful, and the only thing that really isn't great about it is the range. So if you combine it with something that gives you some good range, then it's pretty cool. And you saw there, when I changed those dress spheres around, I've got something called Impenetrable Front, which I'm going to find out how it works fairly soon. So, but I mean, one thing that I always found was, especially when I get to the later levels, maybe it's because I'm underleveled for the later part of the game, but honestly it was taking me like 6 to 8 turns at least to defeat even the standard enemies. So I don't know if that happens to everyone as you go through, or whether I didn't level up enough as I played, but at the moment it's not too bad, but it just gets worse and worse. So by the time you hit like level 30, it's like 5 turns, and it gets longer and longer. But I've got some pretty cool abilities going right now. I can defeat fiends to heal my HP. I've got Impenetrable Front as well. But we've got a new enemy. This is the Protein Gel. And it doesn't seem to work like it does in Final Fantasy X, because it uses Blizzard, as you can see. But I can't get it to change it, so you know, just attacking it normally doesn't change its elemental affinity, so it always attacks with Blizzard. So if you're protected against ice at this stage, it doesn't seem like you're going to have a problem unless you attack it with something elemental, I guess. So for that reason, the protein gels weren't too bad, because I had my ice protection, so that was cool. And after a while they run out of MP as well, that makes your life a little bit easier, but I underestimated how much damage that lizard was going to do. And this is the problem. So she takes a lot of damage, and especially at low levels, when you're at like level 1, 2, 3-ish, you're going to die very quickly, especially with your long range ones. So that was pretty bad. But as you can see, I mean, when you start to put together some nice dress spheres, Warrior and Berserker together, and Psychic, I believe, if you have those three, I think you get Impenetrable Front, which is awesome to have, because when an enemy is directly facing you, then you don't take any damage, regardless of how strong the enemy is, so that's very useful. So from now on, I'm going to skip around a lot more, just kind of show you guys little basic bits here and there. If there's any new enemies I encounter, or anything interesting that I pick up or fuse, because other than that it's pretty much similar. As you can see, I don't know how you get these equipments. I don't know if they're randomly generated, but they're almost always dropped, so maybe each enemy has a probability of dropping something, but it happens pretty rarely. But yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. It seems to me, from what I've noticed, that that magic is king, really. If you can find a way to keep your MP going, and at the moment I've traded that in for having more HP, but if you can find a way to keep your MP high, using magic is very good, because it almost always has a long range. And you're going to notice as I move on, it's almost always the enemies that use a lot of magic that cause problems. So they're very difficult to escape from, and if you don't have elemental protection, they hit hard. So it's just magic seemed to be the thing that I needed to watch out most for. And there you go, this is an example of the luck that I had with the Dark Knight. But of course you have the stupid mechanic that if it's equipped you can't fuse it, which I don't quite understand why, but there you go. So you have to unequip.
Anything you can do, I can do better!
So you have to unequip first, and then do it. But this is where my streak began with Dark Knight, and it just kept going and going and going. Which puts you in a difficult position, because when you have one that's more leveled than the rest, it kind of forces you to use it.
This feels nice and evil.
So as it gets more and more difficult, you have no choice but to keep the Dark Knight, because if you change to anything else, you die in one hit, because they're like level 1. So obviously that led to me focusing more and more on the Dark Knight, and it just ran away with it compared to everyone else. But yeah, this floor was all about the protein gels, and then this was a new enemy on floor 50. And what I've done at the top is annotate the conditions that you need to get through. Because this floor took me absolutely ages because I didn't realise that you had to drop 2 items to get through. So that's a bit silly. But you can see already it's taken me quite a few turns to take people out, even with a Dark Knight. But look, again, Dark Knight, it's just luck. Just kept picking up Dark Knights for some reason. Enhancing potions, good as well. I really do like the idea that you can pick up potions that will level you up instantly, because it seems like without the potions it was taking me ages. So it's good. And you can pick up ones that level you up 3 levels at a time, which is awesome. That was pretty much my main source of levels, to be honest. Obviously got Dark Touch as well, which is helping me out. And the Black Mage and the Gun Mage is helping me to heal MP over time, as you can see. So having MP healing over time is amazing. It's one of the best things, I think. Because like I said, magic really does help, and obviously being able to use abilities, so definitely I'd recommend trying to get a combination that will enable you to heal MP over time. MP stroll, I guess. But yeah, I was quite fearful of the cactars. I thought they'd be difficult, but they turned out to be very easy. They're not very hostile. Most of the time they just completely leave you alone. They don't attack you very often, so it's pretty good. And they only have about 40 HP. So yeah, this was when I realised that you had to drop items, because I just went around and did my research on the internet because I just could not figure out how to get through, and I knew the founder was coming soon, so I learned that I had to drop items, and that's exactly what I did. And that unlocked level 15 as well, so that pretty much rounds off this part. I'll be back with more soon, and I'll answer a couple of questions that was asked in the previous video as well, for a little bit of Q&A.